want you to imagine that you were me 3 years ago, or any incoming freshman girl at the college of her dreams. For me, it was Stanford University. You're excited, you're nervous, but you're ready to start this new chapter. I'm sorry, Mom and Dad, but I can't think of a more thrilling moment in my life when I saw you drive away with our minivan, and I got to, make sure I made my own decisions and everything was on my terms. I also want you to think about this statistic. 54% of reported sexual assault victims are freshmen in college. 54%. So at that moment when I was so excited, so thrilled to be here, I also was my most vulnerable. So what's the messaging students get? Delta Kappa Epsilon would like to welcome all incoming freshman girls. This is hanging outside of a fraternity during the first week of school. And what's the messaging our parents get? Thank you for your daughters. So how do we get in front of this thing? Today, I'd like to talk to you about how we can take a on-the-ground look at college sexual assault culture as a student myself, why we should all care about it, and what we really can do to stop this. So first, let's start with a few basics. What is sexual assault? Sexual assault is any type of sexual contact or behavior that occurs without the explicit consent of the recipient, and that's according to the United States Department of Justice. So how do we get in front of this thing? I've been working on this issue for a couple years now, and what I've really come to realize is prevention education is the way to go. And if we likened this epidemic of sexual assault to a tsunami, a natural disaster that leaves devastation and destruction in its path, we can put an end to the tsunami altogether, and we can also learn how to pick up the pieces at the very end. So what I started to think about was, who is my community? How can I bring prevention education to the people I know best? And the people that I know best are my fellow students, my peers at Stanford University. And so I started to think about how, if something happens to any one of us, we're a tribe. We're going to do something to fix it, and we have to support each other. And through my research, I came across this concept of forum theater, understanding through improvisation. Forum theater is something developed by Augustus Boal, who wrote Theater of the Oppressed, and it talks about how we can put together a theater program, get students or communities to really participate in this program, and then go up on stage and practice their interventions. You really get to practice what you're preached. And so I got a theater troupe from Southern California to come to Stanford in November. We had 300 students in this auditorium, students from Greek life, students from residential education, from various community centers all over campus. And the theater troupe put together this program where they had scenes leading up to a sexual assault and then scenes afterwards in recovery. And so students got to give their interventions and then go up on stage. It was really cool. So the first thing this theater troupe taught us was challenging the norm. So as university students, we are here all the time. We live here at Stanford, and we're faced with many situations and scenarios where sexual assault can happen. But at the same time, we're also in this culture that maybe allows it to happen. So imagine this familiar scene. It's a Friday night. You and your friends are around a keg, and there's casual conversation. Some people are talking about their number. How many people have they slept with, and how many people do they hope to sleep with that night? A girl walks by in a really tight skirt, a few people make a few comments, and conversation continues. So what this theater troupe taught us was, by being silent in such a situation, where there's dehumanizing behavior, where the people that are being discussed about are reduced to just a number, we are being complicit in a culture that allows sexual assault to happen and maybe even celebrates it. The second thing they talked to us about was empathy. How do we really know what's going on in a survivor's mind? How do we understand this? So imagine this scene. The actress who's embodying the survivor is on stage, and it's the day after the assault. And she's just sitting there in her bedroom, and the theater troupe asked us, what do you think is going on in her mind? What are a few thoughts? A lot of people raised their hands, and a couple of people said things like, well, I shouldn't have been drinking so much last night. And somebody else said, well, I shouldn't have been wearing that really tight dress. And the most common phrase that people talked about was, well, it's all my fault. So these students went up on stage, they surrounded the survivor, and they repeated these phrases over and over and over again. And you could just see the absolute devastation in that survivor's face and her body. And she was sinking deeper and deeper into a hole that would be so much harder to get out of. So as friends, as that first touch point, as a community of students, we're going to be the first people that these survivors talk to. And when we are addressing the survivor of sexual assault, we need to learn to not only address the voice that's directly speaking to us, but also address the many voices that are in the survivor's mind. And the last thing, one of the most powerful scenes that I remember was about response. How do we effectively respond to a survivor? And so it's the next day, the survivor is talking to a few of her friends, and the scene pauses right there, and the audience is asked, okay, what do you think is the first reaction you're going to have? And many students said, oh, I would give them a hug. I would just reach out. We just learned about empathy. I would touch them on the arm, and I would give my friend a hug, because when anyone is going through something difficult, that's what we do. We're humans. We give each other hugs. We touch each other on the arm. And so the students went up on stage, and they practiced it. They did it with the survivor, and you could just tell immediately when they leaned in for that hug that it was the wrong thing to do. The survivor shut down, she got angry, she stopped speaking, and she left the scene. And as audience members, we were thinking, well, what did we do wrong? That's just such a natural response for us to have. And what the theater troupe taught us was, when a survivor goes through sexual assault and is thinking about that incident, it's the ultimate violation of their body. It's the ultimate violation of everything that they are embodying, and that power has been taken away from them. So when a survivor is talking to you, you need to make that emotional connection to really show them that you care, to show them that you support them. But maybe physical contact isn't the right way to go. So 3 things I want you guys to think about today. 1, challenge the norms in your communities. So as students, we find ourselves in familiar situations, such as like going out on a Friday night all the time. But it's on us to say something about it. Because the fact is, sexual assault doesn't start with the assault itself. It starts with that sexist joke the week before. It starts with allowing this culture to perpetuate on our campus. Second, maintain connections. Maintain emotional connections with your peers. That 1 in 5 number, 1 in 5 college women will be affected by sexual assault, that number is real. And we need to make sure that we have good connections with all of our friends and all the people in our community. And finally, honor a survivor's autonomy. So a friend, when they come talk to you about a sexual assault, if it happens, realize that as a survivor, you're at all ends of the spectrum in terms of how you're dealing with your recovery process. Only 5% of survivors will report their sexual assault to law enforcement. The rest of them are going to talk to their friends. They're going to talk to their mentors, their advisors, their professors. And it's on us to really honor their journey. So I want you to think about your daughter or your sister, your son, your close circle, and realize that somebody close to you probably has been affected by sexual assault. And if they haven't, someone in the future definitely will be affected by sexual assault. So you may not have been in that room with us, in that auditorium in November, but I hope that my talk today gives you a little glimpse at what we can do, what tangible things we can do to put an end to this epidemic, and how it is on us to really stop it. Thank you.